You
Here we
record
go.
also.
Okay, I'm going to go and admit.
We've got some familiar faces.
Hey,
Stanley.
welcome to today's Zoom meeting. Today our guest is Nick Curto. Before I start, I want to just let everybody know this meeting is being recorded. It will be uploaded to the website and YouTube. And from here, it's a special day, and I think we're going to be reflecting that in not only Nick's presentation, but also some other surprise events that we have scheduled for today's meeting. For those of you who don't know Nick Curto, Nick is a very, very active and proactive member of the Disclosure Network New York. He was the founding director of it. He has been doing this for over 20 years, and he has a great following, and he puts on some very, very excellent programming. And we're lucky to have him today as our guest. And of course, you all know Nick. He's been participating as a panelist on other shows. And so I'm going to turn it over to Nick. I think I made all the announcements. Bruce, do you have anything to add?
No, other than the standard housekeeping, we ask everyone to keep their cameras on if they don't mind. And certainly, if they're going to participate and speak, we'd like to have their camera on at that point. But also, we ask you to please adhere to decorum by keeping your mics muted if you're not participating, so that we don't get background noise in. Other than that, we encourage you to participate, and frankly, you can type your comments in the chat. That's available for everybody, and everyone will see them, and then we'll moderate the questions if you prefer not to speak on camera.
Okay, well, without further ado, first of all, welcome everybody that is joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Nick. Nick, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Joe, for your very kind invitation to do a little talk here today. And what a day it is. With 20 years from 9/11, and the sting, I think you can all agree, is still very much with us. It hasn't gone away at all. I don't care where you're living. If you were here in New York City, right by the disaster, or if you were in another part of the world, boy, that day, that morning, never forget that ever. It was such a shock on so many levels. I think we're still reeling from it. I am, and I'm sure that we all are, because there's so much that needs to be found out and explained, and the criminals need to be brought to justice that did that. And I'm going to take the stand that they are still out there. The ones who haven't died are still very much with us, and that alone is something to really ponder and to act upon. I think I would like, for 1 minute now, I'll approximate it, but if everybody would just say a silent prayer for 1 minute about for the 3,000 people who we lost that morning, that horrible morning. So please, 1 moment of just silent prayer right now, please. Bless the men and the women and the children that we lost that day. Bless them all. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, boy. Well, I also have to say to you, I am really angry that we have not gotten to the bottom of who did what that day. I feel as though we've been deceived 1,000%, and that's got to end. There is a wonderful group. I've been to a couple of their meetings, the lawyers group, who are a smart, wonderful bunch of people that are digging to the bottom of this. And if you can do anything to support them, please go ahead and do that. They deserve all of our support because they are really working hard to get the truth out and to explore what really went on. So we need them really badly, for sure. I'm going to start off here with a couple of things. I have some items I'd like to just read off quickly to you. And then after this, I think I've got about 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after that, we're going to run some video, short videos, 30 seconds to maybe a minute or so, that are pretty self-explanatory. And what I'm reading here, you'll be able to see with your own eyes because they're videos that were made that day. Item, a news reporter many blocks south of the World Trade Center, a woman reporter is telling us on camera that the building is coming down right now, and she's covering that story. The problem with her report is that the building is still standing untouched. That's on video. How in the world did she report that? Is she somehow a mystic? That she somehow got it was going to happen? This has never been explained. Obviously, we know why, and it's been buried. But that is absolutely a true thing. Item, the images from the computer that were being broadcast live as the attack was taking place of a plane in close-up flying into the tower, and the wing on the left-hand side of the plane literally disappears as it flies by a building in the far background. Now, the problem with that is that the wing should obviously be in front of the building because the building is in far back, but the wing of the plane disappears, which means this is a false, very false image. And we have the video of that. I ran that maybe 10 times when I first saw it because I couldn't believe my eyes. Item, another live image of a large explosion on one of the towers is shown at the quote moment of contact and the attack happening. But the problem with that is that there's no plane hitting the tower. It's only a huge explosion. What? How does that take place? How can that happen? It doesn't fit the narrative that they gave us, the official story, because the plane image wasn't added in yet. And that has been buried also. Item, in the many weeks before the attack, trucks were delivering boxes to the World Trade Center very late at night, like 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning when almost nobody was there, except I believe one person whose job it was to check what they were delivering. This went on for weeks before 9/11. What do you think could possibly be in the boxes? I'll take a guess. I think you can too. How about explosives being brought in there ahead of time to be put in the very structure of the World Trade Center, both towers? Controlled demolition. Item, I hope you've read Rebecca Roth's books. If you haven't, Rebecca Roth, who is a former employee with the airline industry, she worked for many, many years there, and she knows planes inside out and backwards. And she's a very smart and curious gal. I've interviewed her for my Disclosure Network a few years ago. I believe we did 2 interviews with her. She's quite something. If you haven't looked up Rebecca Roth, please go ahead and do that at some point. And she was talking about the fact that something was wrong, because she said something is so wrong with all this on so many levels. And she said, I just wonder who was taking a lease in the World Trade Center at that time. So she somehow got the list of all the people that were taking contracted rooms in both towers. And she came across something quite interesting. She found out that one of the high floors of one of the towers was identified as having young art students from Israel. What? She read all the list a couple of times, and that one stuck in her mind. What was that about? Young art students from Israel were occupying that room. Who was paying for that? Obviously not the art students. I was an art student. We didn't have a whole lot of money. So she did some more research and found, and get this, that group also had a little website on the internet. Well, she went to take a look, and guess what she happened to find? Photographs. The art students never had really good face shots. They always were like in back or sides, but never really good face shots. And there were some shots that they had taken in the suite of rooms that they had there. And she said, I want to blow up the photographs. I just do. So she had them blown up. And guess what she found? At least one of the photographs had, in the very back, very, very back, hard to see, boxes from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, hundreds of boxes. Well, that's curious. Maybe they were, let's go along with the fact that they were art students. So they had to be the art supplies, I guess, right? What else would they be? So she had it blown up, and she could read very, very small print of what was on all the boxes. Every one of the boxes had a little coding, a little words there. Well, she wrote it down, and she started doing research, and she found where the boxes were from and what was in them. Guess what they were? It wasn't paints or crayons or inks. It was explosives. Did you hear what I said? It was explosives. Does that clue us in a little bit? Again, when I first got wind of that, I really couldn't talk. Holy cow. All right, here we go again. I've got a couple more to read to you. Rebecca, who worked at the airline industry again for a good part of her life, and she knew the planes backwards and forwards. She knew how they sounded, what they were like, how they felt, all the subtleties, because when you're in a plane that length of time, you know all of that. And at some point, she got a hold of the audio tapes that were said to be the people in the planes in 9/11 that were in the planes that were captured. And they were in there, and some of them got on their cell phones, according to the story, and very quietly were calling their loved ones, saying, we are being held here in the plane. The plane is in control of people with guns. And you've heard, I'm sure we've all heard some of those tapes, and they are heart-wrenching, heart-wrenching. Well, she started listening really close. Again, Rebecca, good for you. And she said, wait a second, they're not talking from a plane. There's nothing in the back of what they're saying. There's no sounds that sound at all like a plane. And she said, wait a second, cell phones and that distances don't work. Almost ever, they don't work. How can they be making phone calls? She said, wait a second, if they're not coming from the plane, they're coming from the ground, And then she said, wait a second, if that's the case, why don't we figure out what time the planes left from the airport and see where they could have gone with that little tiny bit of window time So she did a lot of research, and she was very good friends with a pilot who flies that route a lot. And he said, you know, Rebecca, there's only a couple of airports that possibly a plane could land. Let's investigate those airports. Well, guess what they found out when they investigated one of these airports? By the way, I was born about a 45-minute car ride from that airport because I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts. And the airport that they investigated was called Westover Air Force Base, a huge Air Force base. I've been by it many, many times. It's an international Air Force base. Well, on the investigation, they found, get this, the personnel of that Air Force base were all ordered to leave, I believe, a day earlier. I don't know what they told them. They said that they'd contact them when they were ready to have them come back to the base. But they left. They were ordered to leave the Air Force base. Take a guess why. Okay? Take a guess why that might have happened. Here's a little bit of, again, this is from Rebecca's book. There's a place called East Otis, Massachusetts. I used to have, with my parents, a little summer camp there. It's a very wooded area. It's got a lake there. It's really nice. Well, Otis Air Force, Otis, by the way, Otis, Massachusetts, happens to be pretty far away from everything. But a woman, and I don't know how she found this out, but a woman said that something very strange happened on 9/11 in the early morning. She said, we never have planes ever come fly over my house. We don't ever hear planes. It never, ever happens. But on 9/11 in the morning, I did hear planes, and some of my neighbors did too, early in the morning. And they seem to be heading for Westover Air Force Base. Okay, so that's what we got. Again, I recommend her book to you. Wow. Again, good for Rebecca to, again, just a person, not a professional investigator, but someone who wanted the truth. And look what she's come up with on her, and just her. And of course, the pilot that helped her also, and I'm sure others, her husband did too. But think of what she came up with, not funded, not with a lot of other people investigating, just her. So is that inspiring or not? Okay, now, when you're ready, Bruce, what we have here are some of the video clips from the things I was reading to you. They're not all, we don't have them all, but we have a few. And anytime you're ready, Bruce, and if you could repeat the clip if you can, because it would be interesting to take a very close look at your screens now when the videos come up, so you can take a look at what's going on and see if you have any feelings about what is true and correct and what is not. Just be patient, folks. We're getting, Bruce is doing his best to get this lined up. Just until we get the thing on screen, I remember that there were no planes after the attack in the air. Everything was grounded, and I went outside walking around Manhattan just to get some air, trying to my mind was racing, and the next day, the planes were not in the air. It was a sunny day, but it seemed very quiet, unusually quiet for Manhattan. And they were saying that, we don't know if this is the only attack. If you remember that, there was no guarantee that that was the only major attack that was going to take place. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. They said, it's possible that we might have a second attack somewhere. So with that, it was kind of a creepy feeling. It really was. And I was walking, and I had to walk a long ways because I was so upset. And I ended up walking all the way, maybe 30, 40 blocks south. I live on 85th Street. And there was a shop, a men's shop, and it had all kinds of men's clothing, including leather jackets. And in the window, there was a leather jacket, and it had I would say, a 1 foot in leather of the American flag on the back of the leather jacket. And I looked at that. I looked at that in the window, and I said, you know what? If I'm going to die today, I'm going to die with that jacket on, period. I went in and bought it, and I wore it. And somehow, man, it felt so good. It felt so good that having that jacket on me. I still have the jacket. I think I can still wear it. But it was one of those moments when I thought, you know what? Sign me up. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's be proud of being Americans. Never more proud than now. Okay, and get to the truth of what's going on. So that's what was. I had to just share that story. Joe, do you remember that day?
Oh, absolutely. I remember every minute of it. Right from the point. I mean, going back years ago when I heard a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. When I was in the Coast Guard, the last 2 years, I was stationed at Governor's Island. And I used to have to take the Coast Guard ferry out to Governor's Island to and from where I worked. And I was taking that ferry, and all of a sudden I saw a black helicopter. It flew underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, and then it peeled off towards the World Trade Center, got about 2/3 of the way up the building, and it looked like it was going to crash right into it. It was heading straight forward. And at the last second, it peeled off. And I said, well, that was strange. I mean, what was that all about? Well, it turns out that Robert Redford was making a movie called Hot Rocks.
Oh,
And they were actually, that was the segment that was filmed, but it was almost prescient about, what would happen years later. There was another plane, buzzing towards the World Trade Center and ostensibly flying into it and, of course, destroying it. So that's what first came to my mind. And then the fact that I thought it was a small plane, the next thing you heard, it was a large passenger plane. And then, 20 minutes later or whatever, the second plane flew in. So it was quite striking. Also, a short time later, like a week later, they had that other plane that was taking off, and it ended up crashing over part of, I think, Queens, killing everybody on it and everything. So it was hard to forget all that.
I forgot about the other incident you just mentioned. I had forgotten that. Yeah. Late afternoon after the disaster, I was in the lobby going out of my building, and I saw people covered in white dust who had been there, and they were returning home. They looked, of course, stunned, and they somehow, I don't know if they walked here. I don't know if the subways were running then even. I don't remember.
Well,
but were the subways running?
With Lower Manhattan, I'm pretty much sure that they shut most of them down.
I think you're right.
The
So
BMT,
unless they got a cab or I don't know, a bus mate, I don't know, but they were coming into the building here on East 85th Street, all the way down from the Battery Park area, and they had the white dust still on them, and they all looked like they had gone to hell and back, and of course they had.
Yeah.
They had done exactly that, and I'll never forget that either. That was part of that. It was stunning. A quick story. before we go back to the videos, is that a week before 9/11, I was in Disney World. I had a timeshare that I transferred to Disney World so we could live there for a week. And of course, in Disney World in Florida, everything is colorful, peaceful, delightful. All the animals are your friends. They come up to you and shake your hand. You know what I'm saying? If for 1 week it was this is heaven on earth, Disney style heaven on earth. And with all that, you're thinking about that on the way back in the plane from the vacation. And then the next morning, I turn on the TV set. It was on the Today program when all hell broke loose. So we went from that to the worst nightmare you could possibly imagine. It was slamming me. I'm sure everybody was too, but I mean, because I was there in Disney World for a week, it just absolutely, again, it just was a blow to the face. It really was. I'll never forget that.
Yep.
Bruce, how are we doing with the video? Is there any way?
Yeah, we're going to give it a try again. I'm sorry, I had so many windows open here that I had problem playing it. I'm going to pull it up one more time because unfortunately I got to download it and convert it. So let me
Okay.
bear with me real quick here. Sorry for the delay.
No.
We
Thank you
tested
for
it
your work.
beforehand, and it did play fine, but unfortunately,
Okay, well, while we're waiting, does anybody have a quick question for Nick or a comment about maybe where you were the day that it happened? And
That's a
your
good idea.
of it.
maybe later on I'll share what I went through. It was unique to say the least. But that being said, let's see if we can play this video for you. I'm going to try to share it now if that's okay.
Great. Let's see it.
Okay, so bear with me. I got a number of steps to go through here to bring it up. I just downloaded it again, and we'll give it a try.
Okay.
See what's... now it's locked up. Hold on. Here we go.
There we go.
Very good. Whoa, look at that.
Because once the tower fell, you heard boom, 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 boom. And we heard this boom, boom, boom.
They were planning to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom. All the way down. So it was like boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, it was like bang, 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 like bullet shots. And we got another explosion on the tower, 1013, 1013, and then a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area.
I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her.
There you go. That's one of the clips. Wow. By the way, that plane looks like it's like going through soft butter. Those buildings were constructed really well. Solid steel beams, very closely spaced together.
Because once the tower fell, you heard boom, 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 boom. And we heard this boom, boom, boom.
They were planning to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom. All the way down. So it was like boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, it was like bang, 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 like bullet shots. And we got another explosion on the tower, 1013, 1013, and then a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area.
I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her.
Amazing video. Wow. If that doesn't say something about what was going on, how in the world did that happen? Did she have a crystal ball? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Adi, do you have anything you want to say? You have
If I,
to, just
without taking too much time, if there's nobody else that has to speak, let me, if I could jump in and offer some stuff, and cut me off when you want to move on. But
sure. Please go ahead.
I have spent since 9/11 as a documentary producer and also as a radio host. I have interviewed the producers for Spare Change. I recommend everybody look at that documentary. In Plain Sight, another one which delineates the multiple elements that statistically, according to an MIT professor in statistics, are 1 in like a trillion, that all of these things came together once. Operation Northwoods at the same time, which caused chaos with the air traffic control system in the FAA. Is this an exercise, or is this real world? So on and so forth. A number of things. For example, you talked about, and it's not been very well publicized, about the Israeli art students. Let me take you back about 3 months before the collapse in the spring. The only time in the history of the World Trade Center's existence where the total power shutdown took place was over a period of, I believe, and I don't want to misquote the facts, but a period of time of a couple weekends where everything, including the security systems, were shut down. They had manual security to not let people in, and they were doing work to upgrade. Now, why is that important? Because that would allow people to, if thermite, which that's another issue, was planted, then there would have been unfettered access without surveillance of individuals doing that. So there are a number of things. I don't tell people what to discern, but if you look at all these elements together, the head of the company that contracted for security was one of the Bush family members. He was the president of that corporation. What a surprise. Coincidence? Perhaps. The World Trade Center was insulated for fire with asbestos-based materials. Mr. Fisher knew when he took the purchase of that building that, first of all, it was failing financially. It was not fully occupied. It was not breaking even, and it would have been so exorbitantly expensive to do the asbestos remediation, which was required by New York City and federal law, that there was no way this was going to end up well. He took out an insurance policy, I believe, once again, I may not have the exact amount straight, but 4 times the value of the property, not too long before the program, before 9/11 happened. Additionally, if you look at the PBS interview, which is well known now, where he said, well, he decided to pull Building 7, there was absolutely no justification from a structural or fire standpoint. There were a small fire up there, but they also had the command center. They had records for the Securities and Exchange Commission. We went through the meltdown, and a lot of dirty laundry was kept in the records at that building. Is that the reason why it disappeared? I can't tell you that factually, but I would suggest that it didn't fall. It wasn't hit by a plane. It didn't fall down because of a fire. I personally worked years before in Philadelphia, one of the, I forget the name of the insurance company. The fire burned in Center City, Philadelphia for 5 or 6 days. An inferno. Burned this thing down to the bare metal. That building didn't collapse. I believe it's 2,300 architects have now signed the documentation that said absolutely it did not fall because of kerosene. If you know, I did aviation documentaries for 15 years. I'm a pilot. I hang around with a lot of pilots. Tonight I'm going down to have dinner with 2 senior pilots who both retired, and a gentleman who is an operating engineer was there at 9/11. And Tommy told me that on several occasions that a month later, the guys that were working on the rubble pile, their shoes were melting. It was so hot with the liquid steel that was still underground smoldering. If you look at JP4, JP5 jet fuel, it's basically cleaned up diesel fuel. It's kerosene that burns in jet engines. The temperature of kerosene burning isn't even the temperature of gasoline burning. To think that you could burn a building down and melt those interior steel walls is asinine. It fell. Now, they had the #1 expert in Holland. I have a copy of the clip. Demolition expert in Western Europe. They interviewed him. They showed him the video, and they said, "What's this look like you?" He said, "Well, one of the best executed controlled demolition events that I've ever seen because they dropped it right in its own footprint. Buildings don't collapse that way. It's shown, and it's been shown through the physics by documentation, that the building pancaked down, but there was no slowing. If it fell at free fall. In other words, it should have pancaked on the floor above, it pancaked on the next floor. It didn't do that. You saw explosion sparks coming out at each floor as if it was controlled demolition. If you review some of the videotape, and there's voluminous videotape, I have a theory which came to me from a respiratory surgeon. It's written a lot of books at Brigham and Children's Hospital in Boston. We met and I did an interview. There has been a lot of theories, and I can't tell you which one is true or not, but if you look at the debris pile from 110 stories, 2 buildings, it's maybe 50 or 60 feet up. I would just, as I've done this lecture with pilots associations many times, I would just suggest to you that please explain to me where 110 floors of marble floors, desks, doorways, elevator shafts, toilets, file cabinets, where did all that material go? I would suggest to you what you just said, and I spent almost 2 days ferrying people across from the western side of Manhattan over to Liberty Island, as a matter of fact, and it was unbelievable. And they looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy, covered in white dust. I suggest to you that material went somewhere, and it was vaporized, it was pulverized, and that's why you had a cloud of dust that covered all of southern Manhattan. People were covered in this dust. If you look, we just had the Bethlehem Tower about a year ago was taken down. It was 46 stories. I took pictures of that building when they did the controlled demolition of it. It had a pile of rubble at the base, equivalent in height, and you could just go and measure it with people standing there, equivalent to the World Trade Center with 110 floors. I once again say to you, where did the structural steel go? Where did the outside go? The glass windows, the carpeting, the chairs. This, and the other side of this element is, if 2 planes went in there, by the way, if you look at the nose cone of any jet aircraft, that's plastic. That is a high quality plastic because it's a radar dome behind it. It's now phased array, it's not a spinning dome or oscillating. That is plastic. It doesn't go through the side of stainless steel buildings. It does not. The wings do not cut through stainless steel buildings, whether it's 500 miles an hour or not. Planes are not made to crash. They're not battering rams unless they're bunker busters where they have hardened noses on them. So if you look at the pictures in slow motion of those aircraft going into the side of the building, they don't accordion up as they hit a hard wall. They just disappear into it. Now, it's a little far-fetched, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that those are, in fact, CGI derived videotapes. So there are many, many, many inconsistencies here. But I would just put it to you, where did the material go? Why were fire engines, pumpers, 3 blocks away bursting into flames? The concept, or one of the theories that behind how that could happen, is scalar weapons. Basically, it's a directed microwave radiation which heats things up and explodes them and pulverizes them. Now, I don't have any proof of that, but when 2,300 architects who are licensed in the United States sign a document that says this did not fall because of a fire from kerosene that did not burn through the rest of it. It did not pancake down like normally. It is not normal for a building that collapses. By the way, no building in the world has ever collapsed because of a structural steel failure based on the amount of hours it burned. It's without precedence, and it's never been. I would only also anecdotally remind you the most heinous mass murder crime in the United States history, and Mr. Giuliani, who was the world's best prosecutor in everybody's eyes, forbid any forensic investigation, locked up the structural steel, put GPS trackers on the truckers taking it out to the landfill. It was immediately whisked off to China for scrap. And as a matter of fact, one driver they dropped the charges. He was going to be prosecuted. He stopped to get a sandwich and left his truck unattended, his tractor trailer, flatbeds, and some dump bodies. And I know this for a fact because my friend Tommy knows the driver because he left the truck unattended. Now, why would you not take time to take forensic investigation? There has been steel now that independently has been investigated, and there are traces of thermite. There is absolutely no reason why thermite, which is used to cut, it is a cutting, what happens is an episode, it cuts through thermite bombs and so forth, that there's no reason for that to be in that building in any trace area. So if you did a forensic investigation about this, then that would have shown up, in my opinion. The air traffic control nonsense, they didn't scramble aircraft until late. I can tell you for a fact, go look this up, talk to anybody that's a commercial pilot, and they will tell you that if you deviate from your flight plan, a commercial airliner, they're all over you in 10 seconds. They don't let you flop around out there doing whatever you want for an hour and a half, making U-turns and coming back. Let's talk about the aircraft and what they performed. My friend, who was the youngest 747 pilot in U.S. history, who just retired with 26,000 hours in the cockpit, told me on many occasions, we went all over the world doing aviation documentaries. He just retired from United a year ago. He said, Bruce, let me tell you something. I could not have performed the acrobatics that they did with that 757 and do what they did in flying ground effect through the front door of the Pentagon, and I've been doing it all my life, much less a guy who couldn't even land a 172. And I can tell you as a pilot, I'd be lucky to find Washington, D.C., much less the Pentagon, and send that aircraft, which would have gone into a high-speed stall, and taken down the light towers. By the way, look at the Pentagon. You are a fool if you believe that an aluminum aircraft could go through 3 rings of 8-inch reinforced concrete. And another issue, let me bring this up. The 757 high bypass turbofan engines weigh about 5 tons each. The blades on those turbofans are titanium, the hardest metal that we can make. I would only ask you, where are the engines? Where are the engines from the Pentagon? Where are the wings from the Pentagon? I've told people a million times, don't take my word for it. Go pull up just do a Google search, commercial aircraft crash photographs. Take a look at what it looks like when a 400,000-pound aircraft makes contact with the ground in the wrong way. Pardon my language, there's crap all over the place. There's wiring, there's seats, there's overheads, there's landing gear. Where did this stuff go? There's 5-ton engines, there's body parts, there's luggage, there's wiring, there's hydraulic lines, there's galley equipment, there's carpeting. Where is all this stuff? Where is any of that in the Pentagon? This guy was so good, he didn't even hit the grass when he went in the front door. So if you go to Shanksville, one of the major people, I have a friend who, NTSB, and I read all the crash, even the small aircraft, light aircraft commercial. Every week I read about the crash investigations, try to learn and be a better pilot. The lead person, and I have read the comments, left the National Transportation Safety Board, retired, said, I quit because that is not a crash site. That, if you looked at that crash site, it looked like a slit trench that this thing disappeared into. He said, where's the crash site? Did it go into a coal mine under there? There's no bodies, there's no debris, there's no wreckage, there's nothing. This is not consistent. Now, then you go to the evidence as you related to about what eyewitnesses said, what eyewitnesses heard. You know, the inconsistency, people saying the building's down and we're watching it behind you. It doesn't look like it's down to me. What's the rationale? What's the reason? What's the agenda behind it? Well, there was a monetary agenda for Mr. Fisher. There was a national agenda in my mind, and that was go back to the Rand report, go down to 1990, where it said clearly in a declassified document the only way the American public would support a unilateral military action in the oil fields in the Middle East was due to a dastardly, unprovoked, high-volume murderous attack on U.S. soil of innocent civilians. I mean, I'm almost quoting it. Well, is that not what happened? You know, the fact of the matter after the fact is we went in and started a war to take over the oil fields. Saddam Hussein hated Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda hated him. They did not get along. It was not a terrorist stronghold. That's been proved. But we took over the oil fields, which was, I think, part of the agenda. You have to say, well, why would people do this to their own? Who was the golfer who was he was in a Gulf Stream? They depressurized. It went off the IFR flight plan. They scrambled 2 jets to F-15s up to see what was going on. They saw that the cockpit windows were all frosted up. They figured depressurized. It ended up flying until it ran out of fuel in North Dakota and crashed in a cornfield up there. That's what happens when you deviate from a flight plan, even before 9/11. They don't just let you go on and do whatever you want because you put other aircraft in peril. So to say the commercial airlines are up there just cruising around, making U-turns, violating their flight plans is absolutely ludicrous. That's not what happens. So in there again, rather than scrambling aircraft out of Otis, they scramble them out of Dulles. You know, they delay that. There are so many inconsistencies. Forgive me for rattling on, but I've covered this and investigated this objectively and with great scrutiny for 20 years as a professional, and I have talked to the people who have done the investigations. You know, these 3,000 people in my mind were sacrificed in the same way that my father's oldest brother and 3,000 people were sacrificed at Pearl Harbor to get us into World War II. Clearly, they knew that was coming. The collusion, to the extent that it was done, I don't know. I can't speak definitively, and I don't suggest anybody believe what I've told you based on what I'm telling you, but go investigate for yourself. You know, the 9/11 Commission was the biggest whitewash job, since the Warren Report. There were things in there that they didn't even consider. But I would only ask, with an open mind, where did all the material go from those 2 buildings? I think it went out in the dust cloud that covered all of lower Manhattan. Why are people dying from it? Because they're breathing this junk of vaporized building materials and carpeting in it, God knows what else, and they ingested all that. Go look at the detail of what the firemen said that were there that weren't killed in that. Go look at the pumper that burned up 4 blocks away, just burst into flames and melted. I mean, how do you explain that stuff? Automobiles that had nothing to do with anything to do with the collapse. And so I just wanted to throw all that out. I didn't mean to take over your discussion, but this is something that I have followed intensely for years, and we've been hoodwinked. We have not been told anything about the truth, but I think there's a bigger agenda, and this was a mechanism to enable that agenda. Forgive me for speaking so long. I apologize.
Bruce, no, what you were saying was very, very important. Thank you so much for all your contributions there. Wow. And you really added up. You're adding up the dots too, and you're coming to the same conclusion. This has been, let's face it, this is a time of deep deceit all around us, from the news people, from the political people. It goes on and on. The age of deceit. Adrian, if you have a quick question, please go ahead. Just unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Actually, I'd like 5 points, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the field in Pennsylvania had no debris. And there were photographs of the debris of one of I don't know which of the Twin Towers it was, but they were angle cut. The steel beams were angle cut. That's exactly how you implode a building. They weakened the structure there. Also, it was rumored, I don't know if you can confirm this, with Building 7, there's gold stored under there. Could have been a distraction. Also, for the Pentagon, they said they were able to identify the bodies from fingerprints. Well, where's the debris? If you can find fingerprints, you should be able to find airplane parts. And last but not least, our reason for all this going on. Yeah, the oil overseas, but we were stationed in Baghdad. There is nothing but sand in Baghdad. What's there was all the museums and the artifacts with ancient knowledge, as well as, I believe, stargates for interdimensional travel.
Thank you so much. Absolutely true. Thank you for that. Bruce, can we go to the other videos? And with the time that's going on, maybe we should just go to the video, the little videos we have. Joe, is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Just one thing, while Bruce is queuing it up, I was just going to ask Stanley and Bruce for quick comments if they had anything. I noticed
Sure.
Stanley was nodding his head quite a bit there.
Sure.
Yeah, but I don't want to take up the rest of the show. So I guess let me start with a few things. Okay, for those who don't know, I do work for CBS National News in New York. And obviously I did cover the event about a block and a half away, which I'll never forget. But I'm gonna skip by that for a minute and go out to Shanksville. Like the rest of you, I do have a lot of flight time in a Cessna 172, King Air, and a few other things. Glad I'm still alive. But make a long story short, out in Shanksville, when a plane crashes, like Bruce, I kind of cover a lot of those items, is a skid mark. I mean, a skid mark? I expected something more than a skid mark. And you have parts. Whether it's a Cessna, a King Air, you have parts. Some thoughts. Okay, let's move on. Coincidence, Springfield, Massachusetts, where I spent my freshman year at Springfield College. And it's a coincidence, I'm not too sure why, but let's talk about coincidences, which are not coincidences. We did a story up in New Hampshire, and I was also in the Air Force. And at the end of the day, it was a college professor. We went to the local bar to have a drink, and we were discussing a few things. I forgot what the story was about, but it was on a warm summer afternoon. He lived in a kind of a mountain retreat cul-de-sac, but fairly large on the inside. And evening, they were all sitting outside, and 3 flying saucers showed up. And everybody looked at him. This was back in the 60s, so obviously no iPhones. And they're kind of staring at him. And they're looking at him. And then 1 large one, 2 small ones. And then they just took off. A few minutes later, 3 jets come in. Okay? Back and forth, up and down, back and forth, looking every which way. Okay, fine. Next day, the college professor, who kind of knew the general over, I think it was at Westover Air Force Base, made a phone call to the tower. And back, this was like not much security, you could drive on and off the base. And the tower said, no, not really. All the planes are here. But in the meantime, the professor was able to get a tail number off one of the planes. So, make a long story short, called the base commander. No, planes are here. None moved. Okay, fine. And he went to the base on his own a couple of days later, looked in the flight log, and there those planes, they were off the time he was looking. Interesting for Otis. Okay.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that. Wow. Any more you got? Anything else?
I do have a little bit more, but we have to go back to 9/11. I was about a block and a half away when the second plane hit. So basically we were interviewing people, not knowing really what had happened at the point there, because we just came out of 57th Street, we're heading south, everybody's heading north. At that point there, you figured probably not gonna be a good situation. So we heard a plane hit and we figured like Cessna, whatever. To make a long story short, they said it was something bigger. We got down to the location, started doing a few interviews. And as I was looking up, I saw a shadow that resembled a plane, hit the building, and then exploded from all different sides, which I thought was interesting, not knowing anything about demolition, but it came out this way, and what I could see came out all 4 sides, but I could only see 3.
Wow.
And at that point there, the entire building, we were getting ready to jump into literally the Hudson River, just pancake straight down. And I can still see that in my eyes today. But the fire came out from the side, the fire came out from the front, and then it kind of tilted towards us a bit, but it didn't pancake straight down to the bottom.
Oh boy, here we go. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Does anybody remember, did they find one of the terrorists' wallet or ID was somewhere on the ground?
Passport.
It was a passport. Okay,
Yeah.
Bruce, what is your take on that? Just roughly, do you think
Could you, what's the chance of that happening?
I know.
Thank
Come
you.
on.
Also, I could bring up is that when I saw the second plane hit, you know, we all fly a lot. I got close to 1 million miles already on one line. It's silver. What
Mhm.
hit the building was not silver. It looked
No.
like
Air Force Gray.
Here we go. Here we go. And you know,
thank you. I didn't know what it was, but that's exactly the color of what it looked like.
I got to say that what we're adding up here with all of these stories and research is this really, believe it or not, is amateur night in Dixie. Look at all the things that went wrong. Wrong to the master plan of trying to put this evil attack on America for the excuse to go to war. Right? That's lots of money on war. Lots of money doesn't ever stop, and it's the Pearl Harbor of the time. That's what they even said. There's quotes about that. Bruce, we got some amazing quote little videos. If we could put some more up there, I think it would really, really help at this point to continue what we're talking about.
Yeah, Bruce Cordette, we'll get back to you as soon as this.
Oh my God.
No plane. Did anybody see a plane?
No.
Then how does that happen? How does that happen? So it was a demolition explosion to weaken the building. There was no plane. Later, they inserted a plane imagery, but you saw that without a plane. If that doesn't, if you're in a court of law, just take a look at that video. Okay. Oh my God. Do you want to go to another video now?
Yeah, I'll go to the next one.
Okay. Thank you. I think that already proves the point that what the official story, it was a story. It should have, by the way, the report should have started off once upon a time with the official a report of what happened from the government. It should have started off once upon a time because it's all a fairy tale. All of it.
When we get done, I want to add something else that I investigated, which is another element to this, and that's what happened to the people on these aircraft. Because in some of the video, you see what is clearly looks like a pod on a 757 underneath the fuselage. And the other issue is, I want to tell you a true story that I spoke to a very close friend of mine who worked in the Defense Department, who gave me some insight of what might have happened in the Pentagon. Let's go to this next video clip.
Thank you, Bruce.
As soon as I can find it.
Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. Watch the wing on the left-hand side. Do you see it? No, you don't. Why?
I'm going to show you
because
here.
It's in back.
This video was allegedly shot by Michael Perzacani, a diamond merchant based in Los Angeles, California.
Wow.
The first impossibility is a real airplane couldn't have sliced through a building with a steel facade with reinforced concrete flooring and 47 steel support beams. A jet's wing can't slice through a steel building like a hot knife through butter. But that's the story the news media wants us to believe. And most people are still believing this hoax.
Not me. Not a lot of people now. We're seeing it for what it is.
But
Here
the
we go
second
again.
impossibility is in plain sight. In fact, I can't believe it took me over 12 years to see. Let me show you a still of this video. I've highlighted a building that's clearly behind the South World Trade Center tower.
Yep. Watch this.
Yet when we pay close attention to the video,
whoa, here we
Flight
go. You see
175's wing should appear
CGI
in front of
error.
the building.
Did you see that?
Not behind it. This is a layering CGI glitch, and this proves that this video, which was seen all over the world, over and over and over again, year after year, is a CGI rendering. Thus, it's not an amateur witness video. It's a fake. And this is one of many, many faked videos put out by the news media.
Tell a lie enough times and they'll believe you.
I've turned on the sharing option for this video.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Goebbels.
you have my permission to copy and paste it onto your blog or website.
We can go to another
and I'm
video
putting
now.
finishing touches on my
Yes,
own
sir.
video, showing how just about every.
Wow.
Okay, Nick, also, I think Bruce Cornett had a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce. Go ahead,
Hold
Bruce.
off for a second. Go ahead,
Sure.
Bruce.
You said there was something else on your mind there.
Yes. It's too bad Robert Morningstar is not on this show.
Yeah.
Because he's told me some amazing things. Like he saw Atta, the so-called pilot of one of the planes, at the Teterboro airport before 9/11.
Mohammed Atta. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest, Joe, that maybe Robert Morningstar could do a program one of your upcoming with this subject matter. That's Bruce, what do you think of that?
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be today. It does not have to be today. That would be an amazing Zoom meeting.
I'll reach out to him this week.
Thank you, Joe. Two things I wanted to elaborate, and I was looking here, I couldn't find it. I interviewed a lady who was a senior flight attendant. Now you'd say, all right, well, so what's her credentials? She did a intense, because one of the questions is, okay, so what happened to all these people? If that was not the aircraft, what happened to the actual people that bought tickets that were supposed to be on these planes? The sad part is I don't have an answer for that, but I believe they were sacrificed. And I'll tell you something that I personally witnessed on 9/11 when I got home. It was a Cincinnati television station which said there was an indication of another. This was actual footage from the Cincinnati CBS affiliate, I believe it was, that said that they had another bomb scare. They had brought this aircraft that supposedly went into Shanksville, had landed in Cincinnati. They were deplaning everybody and going to investigate. This was at the far end of the Cincinnati airport. I subsequently spoke to, they had a terminal that sat out in the middle of the airport. It was separate and apart. And they took everybody from this. They had it documented. The next day, there was no such film. It was totally, I called the station. They said, we don't know what you're talking about. Well, I sat and watched it. It was on the air. So this flight attendant, going back to Westover, and there was another reserve base, and I think it was Westover because it's been a number. We had her on our radio show, Unknown Origins. She wrote a book where she said, look, there was an exchange of the two aircraft. She showed the flight patterns where they took this perhaps second aircraft, which was either an Air Force, the one that Stanley saw, the gray aircraft, and they swapped it out over Western. And see, that the fact that the base was closed to personnel, the runways are long enough to take a 757 landing. I don't know that I have all the answers to this, but man, it's pretty creepy when you start putting these dots together. And this woman made a compelling case for the fact that there was a swap over Western New York of these aircraft. Go ahead, Nick. I didn't mean to.
I just want to add, Bruce, to what you just said, which is important stuff here, important data. Rebecca Roth said that she believes what happened was that the planes landed in Westover. I think that's certainly probably exactly what happened. I think that did happen. And then certain people were chosen to get off the plane before everybody else in the plane was either gassed to death or something like that and disposed of. She thinks maybe there. We don't know that. But the people who were selected went into one of the big buildings upstairs. For some reason, she said upstairs, and they were doing those scripted.
That's exactly right.
And if you listen closely to one of the tapes, way in the background, you're going to hear somebody after this person was talking to someone, I guess a relative or someone. Supposedly she was on the plane, but she wasn't on the plane. She's on the ground. And at one point, after she says what I think was a script, someone in the background near her says, "Well done."
Yeah, you can hear the background discussions.
Well done. Like you did a good job reading your script. I mean, think of the deceit. Think of the plan on this, really. I mean, it boggles your mind. And to think where were all those people now? Well, I think that they were also executed after they did what they had to do. Don't leave anybody out, you know, kill them all. The question is, did they fly all the bodies out of there, or did they somehow dispose of them at the Westover Air Force Base? That's a real good question.
These concepts are so heinous and so out of the realm of believing that, you know, our government would undertake such things, that it's hard for people on the street to not look at you and go, "You're a nut. Why would you ever say?" But the fact of the matter is, you know, it's the same people that promulgate, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." Yeah, like the Bay of Pigs, the USS Liberty, the Gulf of Tonkin, Watergate, Iran-Contra. This stuff was all made up and somebody wearing an aluminum foil hat also, wasn't it? No, you know, people do evil things. And because we've never seen anything on this scale before does not mean that people that have uncontrollable greed and control aspirations wouldn't do this to their fellow citizens. You know, like it or not, there's 3,000 people who cease to exist. And as you said at the beginning of the program, you just picture this if it was your mom or dad, or your sister, or your wife, or your daughter. I mean, these are real people that were made to disappear for the rest of their lives. They have no lives. It's over. Like it or not, whatever the reason is, that's the reality. Do you think that's not worth investigating to the nth degree? And we don't. We accept this stuff and move on like a bunch of ADHD kids. Stanley, you know that. What's on the next? You know, we don't last 30 seconds of interest in anything, and we're moving on to the next thing.
Very true. We have a very short attention span, extremely short. That's why a lot of the news is brought out. It's short, and hopefully you're going to understand what we say in that little brief segment.
Yep.
Stanley, sometimes on the national news, which is about a half an hour, right? And they spent a good deal of time on what Beyonce had warned to prevent, right? But how about China? Hello, how about 9/11? Nothing, zero, right? I mean, that's what's going on. And when I don't watch it all the time, but when I do watch it, I have to punch something like a pillow, because what we're getting is total nonsense. It's filling up the time, filling up the time.
You know,
not their generation.
Along the same lines, if you go back to Flight 800,
yes,
and the cover-up that took place there, I mean,
and I went to Mauritius. I was out there.
Yeah, they were moving debris when they laid out the 747 in the hangar. They were moving things from one pile to another in order to change the narrative. 3 seats in first class disappeared.
Yep.
They had brown residue on it. That was residue from a rocket engine, from a surface air rocket engine.
Yes.
So, I mean, and it's not new. That was under, you know, back.
Are you talking about Flight 800?
TWA, yes. And they kept that locked up, and the NTSB was not even allowed into the air hangar. It screwed up the Coast Guard air operations at Air Station Cape Cod, because when they reconstructed it, they wouldn't leave the NTSB in to do their investigation for months. And they finally threatened to go into federal court and sue to have that aircraft released. So, you know, Bruce, let me let you speak, but let me just tell you, let me point something else, and Stanley, back me up on this. When you have a vertical stabilizer problem that U.S. Air had when they locked the stabilizer and put that 737 in, you know, Boeing was right up there saying, well, it's not our equipment, it's not our fault, because of the lawsuits that come out of it, because they want to spin it the way they want. Even though that was a 100 series 747, I talked to people, and that was not a fuel tank explosion. If you look where the explosion started on the recreation, and I looked at the NTSB reports, it happened in front of the wings, in front of the wing tanks, not after. It was hit by a device. And here's the interesting point. When these accidents happen, there's a flood of lawsuits. They're always crushed. There's never any publicity about it. They bought off everybody in that aircraft, and paid them off so that there would be no more discussion. And they were, part of the agreement is we'll pay you off. You keep your mouth shut. You say nothing publicly, or you'll forfeit the sum. When Boeing didn't say a word about even though it was a 100 series and they were up to 400 series before they stopped producing 47s, even though it was a 100 series, they didn't make one peep about, hey, no, our aircraft don't blow up because the fuel tanks have wiring problems. You didn't hear a peep out of them. And so I just want to point that out. I don't draw any conclusions out of it, but go take a look at what normally happens with the F. Lee Baileys of the world when there's a crash and everybody wants to sue the daylights out of anybody moving. Go ahead, Bruce. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I have a couple things I'd like to bring into this discussion. I've videotaped many aircraft coming into Kennedy Airport on the seawall along the coast during my period of investigation. And on one particular case, I was at Seabright at the edge of the inner channel, and the flights would come in from the ocean and turn right over me and head down following the edge of the coast to Kennedy. And as this TWA flight 800 flight, had TWA on its tail, flew past me, I was videotaping, and a missile came from the direction of the sea and malfunctioned as it flew right over the top of this aircraft and then splashed into the inner coastal waterway. I was shocked. So I looked at this videotape. It's on the internet. I put it up there. And I called the Kennedy Airport. Oh, no, I called the FBI. I said, I think I have evidence of a missile attack on another TWA flight. And they laughed at me. The guy laughed at me. So I called Kennedy, called their security. I told him, he said, send me the tape of it. I did.
Yeah, right.
About a week later, I get a call. I can't believe this. We've been watching this tape over and over again. And we finally called the FBI and tell them, get the hell over at Cornet's place. And they brought the whole team that investigated Flight 800 over to my house. Believe that?
Wow.
And, I had made copies of the tape, so I gave them the tape, the original, and it didn't bother me because I had made copies, and I'd also taken frames off all of the images, and maybe I can.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, I have it. I can maybe put it into the chat, and you can download it.
That's incredible.
And so you have to ask, what happened? You see it as this long missile with flames coming out the back, coming from the right, and as it gets over the top of the plane, there's a sparks coming out the head of it, at the front of it, and it causes the missile to change direction and instead plunge towards the ocean. In other words, the detonator malfunctioned. It's bottom line.
Holy smoke.
And that would have been another TWA flight going down on the coast if that had worked.
Wow.
So it was probably fired from a ship out in the along the coast.
I can add two pieces of ancillary first person. When I worked for RCA Americon, we were on the Space Shuttle Video Project. One of the divisions, RCA Defense Systems down in Moorestown, were the guys at one of the few RCA divisions that still exist, I believe. They make the phased array radar that are on the guided missile cruisers and so on. That's the flat plate, not the oscillating, rotating antennas we used to see on radar, the classic antennas. And I had a good friend down there who was an engineer. He still remains a friend. And he told me that, I said, well, how do you test these things? I know you got that mocked up ship down there sitting along the highway. I think it's on 295. He goes, well, the Navy, you routinely will take high traffic areas like the Long Island Sound, and they'll do radar test locks on it. Now, he said occasionally they fire dummies, and but they use that to discern whether there's a bogey in the middle of neutral and non-threatening commercial aircraft. That's how they use the discrimination capabilities, and this was 20 years ago. Let's go back over to the Pentagon, and let me tell you a story of a good friend of mine. I promised him I wouldn't use his name. He was in the television program in New Mexico with me. He ended up I saw him at the NAB convention in Las Vegas about, it had to be 10 or 15 years ago. Hadn't seen him in years. I said, hey, what are you doing these days? He said, well, I said, you're out of television. I heard that he had become a motorcycle cop, believe it or not. And he said, no, he says, I'm back doing film work. I said, film? Nobody's using film. He says, well, I'm working for the Defense Department. And he said, we go up in choppers and shoot this stabilized, 30,000 frame a second film. For analysis. I said, really? He says, oh yeah, we're out in the desert, Mojave, and white sands all the time. I said, so what are you shooting? He says, well, we were the ones that documented the evaluation of the bunker busters before the Gulf War. I said, really? I said, so this was long after the Gulf War, and I said, so I guess you're out of work, huh? And he looks around, and we're out on the front lawn there. If you've ever been to the Las Vegas Convention Center, he's got a big parking lot and stuff. They always have the trucks out there and stuff. And he's looking around. I said, Jesus, John, what are you playing Spook World? He goes, no, this is really high stuff, he said. He said, what do you think took out the Pentagon? And he caught me flat-footed. I said, he says, that was a bunker buster. He said, that absolutely. That's the hardened nose cone on them is designed to go through the revetments, the reinforced concrete, go in, and then it explodes. He said, you don't really think a 757 punched its way through 3 rings of the Pentagon and then disappeared, do you? He said, I know for a fact that's what it did. We were all high-fiving because, look, that's what they used. And two military officers signed affidavits that were never in the 9/11 Commission report, one of which said that he saw what looked like a cruise missile. It was not a commercial aircraft. The commercial aircraft cannot fly, Stanley, back me up on this, within ground effect at 65 feet when you have a 138-foot wingspan. Now, you can come into land and cut through that, obviously, but you can't fly in level flight at below the ground effect. So it couldn't possibly, and they cut off the telephone poles on the roadway there, which were at 67 feet. So there are certain things that are physically impossible. By the way, look at the pictures immediately afterwards. There's no debris, there's nothing. Where did the vertical stabilizer hit the building? Show me the line in the concrete where the vertical stabilizer, 37 feet tall, struck the building. What did it fold up like a carrier aircraft? Where did the wings go? There's a hole that's like 20 feet wide. How can people buy this nonsense? It defies logic. I just wanted to bring because this fella told me, hook, line, and sinker. They bought the Kennedy assassination. I'm sorry, forgive me.
No. You're doing it. You're saying you're lining it up again. You're absolutely on target here.
I have the animated GIF of that missile attack in chat for those who want to download it.
Oh my goodness, let me share that. Can I share that? Do you mind?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right, thank you.
How long is it? How long is it, roughly?
Very short, very short.
Okay, great. That would be great to see that.
Now, and I think Nick, we're going to have to get Nick back on track again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Do you want to show the last video that you had, Nick, and then Bruce, if we have time, we'll show that.
Right. We had 4, right? We just showed three. Okay, yes. This is the 4th one, guys. Just a quick look at this.
Okay, stand by. I'm going to bring it up for you.
Bruce. Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing stuff. Add it up. Oh, wow. Connect the dots, guys. Here we go.
His agency has obtained by questioning men like Khalek Sheikh Mohammed, has provided valuable information and has helped disrupt terrorist plots, including strikes within the United States. For example, Khalek Sheikh Mohammed described the design of planned attacks on buildings inside the U.S. and how operatives were directed to carry them out. That is valuable information for those of us who have the responsibility to protect the American people.
Oh.
He told us the operatives had been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping.
Explosives. The word is explosives.
Instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping.
What
Draw
an
your own
idiot.
conclusions.
Oh my God. Oh my, it's in your face, guys. It's in your face, right? We all know that. And how in the world has it been 20 years when this has gotten, oh my God. Every time I think about it, I start spinning.
Look at all of our freedoms are gone now.
Exactly.
They're
The
all
Patriot, a thing like they're very good at the names. They name something so you can't possibly say it's bad. The Patriot Act. Who's
Right.
going to fight that? But look what's in it, right?
Precisely. And then look at Patriot 2 that takes the sunset clause out of it. Look at, and Fox, to their credit, was the only one. This had to be 7 or 8 years ago when Bush was in, what they called the Caesar Decree, which was a consolidation of the most abused device, I think, in the presidency of this country, and that is executive orders, where the Caesar Decree consolidated all of these draconian capabilities that said, you know, I can declare an emergency. We don't define what that is or what the status of it is. I can control communications, transportation, energy, across the board. And there's no oversight to that. See, you know, look at the rash, whatever your politics are, of executive orders. It's almost like these guys are, you know, Trump did 1 million of them. You know, our friend in the White House now did so many, I'm surprised his hand didn't fall off signing them all. But there's no oversight to this. There's no control on this. How ironic, how disgustingly ironic is we leave $85 billion worth of useful hardware over there after 20 years of blowing guys' legs off, killing innocent people, trillions, $3.2 trillion, and they're still growing poppies and sending it over for people to kill themselves with. 20 years after this, and now, folks, it is my humble opinion that we have just poured gasoline on the fire of the War on Terror Phase 2. It's 2.0. You know what? There will be no end to the money spent on the War on Terror. And how does that equate to human citizens in the United States? 5G, constant surveillance. This is going to be something out of a cheap B movie going forward. You will have no privacy. You will have no rights. That's my humble opinion. You do not have to believe it because I think it. But I see evidence every day. Once 5G is in and the surveillance capabilities is ramped up multiple times, you won't be able to blow your nose without somebody knowing how many sheets of tissue paper you used to blow it with. Truly, it's frightening. It is frightening. Forgive me for getting on my soapbox, but you disagree if you want.
I don't say anymore our government. I can't say our government. I say the government. Yes. Because honest to God, I don't feel anymore that it's my government, that I voted. I don't believe that now. It's so sad to say that. It's not my government. It's the government, not my government anymore. That's all.
I agree.
Well said. Well said.
Yes.
The second thing I wanted to point out, it was regarding the Flight 800. I was taking classes for an insurance course, a license, in New Jersey, Eastern New Jersey, and one of the EMTs that was also taking the class told me a story that just blew my mind. He said he was with a group of other EMTs in a boat that was off the Sandy Hook and doing an exercise in conjunction with the Coast Guard. And maybe Joe, you can, and Bruce, you can figure out what was going on here and what records there are, but if there are any records left. But when they were out, they saw what appeared to be a missile flare, the bright light from a missile coming from the direction of Fort Earl, going out over the Long Island Sound. And then there was this huge orange explosion. They videotaped it. They called it in. But when they got back to shore, the FBI met them, confiscated all their camera and pictures, and told them that if any of this information ever got out, they would be prosecuted.
Here we go.
I know that over the years, they've reported missile-like objects over lower Manhattan and Brooklyn, and it wasn't overly extraordinary. Flight 800, though, my understanding was off of Moriches, which is quite a bit further to the north and west, north and east. However, things being fired locally probably has taken place. Now, whether it's kids with fancy rockets firing things or something else, UFO activity has been manyfold over the area, over the bay, Raritan Bay,
right?
In that area, which is where Earl is on the bay. It's
they called EMT and they were given a story that they were offloading missiles at the fort from a ship, and somehow somebody
it fired off.
Yeah, one of them fired off.
Yeah, which is possible. Munitions can fire off. They can cook off for whatever reason, especially if you drop it or something like that.
Right.
And there were so many millions of tons of ammunition that's moved on those piers. That's the longest finger pier in the world. It's a 2.5 mile long finger pier that can accommodate nuclear submarines and all the ships of the fleet. And they all take on or offload ammunition at that pier. And of course, it's stored 13.2 miles to the south. Earl is actually in Colts Neck. Leonardo's section is where the pier is, in Middleton. So, yeah, accidents do happen. The Nike site that blew up back in 1958 was about 1.5 miles from that pier, right alongside the Navy Road, killed 10 men. And that was a missile, and some of those did fire off. One actually landed in the bay back in 1958. So, yeah, accidents definitely do happen. But I'm not sure about the relationship, the direct relationship with Flight 800. The 747, which I believe was Air France, that was flying a number of people. They actually replaced that flight. And I do have a story from somebody who, in theory, is in the know, but I'm not going to say it over over a live connection. Okay, so, but it is
Flight 800 was TWA.
Yeah, TWA, right?
Right,
Yeah,
heading to Egypt.
And this missile they saw was on that night.
Wow.
Okay, because somebody else had seen a missile launched during that as well, and it was off of Hampton Bays.
Yes.
A fishing boat off of Hampton Bays, supposedly. That's where it was sighted. So there's a lot of stories, but they all got squelched. They all got diverted. And the agreements that are made, especially when you buy off all the people that were killed or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the truth will never see the light of day other than anecdotally over a beer someplace. Yeah.
Here's $1 million. If you say anything, you have to forfeit it. We'll come back and get it.
Non-disclosure, yeah.
Absolutely. Very strict non-disclosure.
We got one hand up, so let's go to 80, and then after 80, let's go to the final video. Okay, so 80 first. Go ahead, 80, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a suggestion. If you want to investigate what happened before 9/11, there's reports and actually saved drawings from children up to 2 weeks before 9/11 of buildings on fire and airplanes crashing, and teachers were going, like, what's going on? I heard another story of a woman the day before was vacationing with her family, and they drove by the Pentagon and she saw it on fire the day before, and everyone's looking at her. She was screaming, can't you see it? Can't you see it? It's on fire. I'm like, no, it's not. And I had my own at 10:04 in the morning before I went from the northwest corner of Connecticut all the way down to Stratford to a construction site. I had my foot on the brake in reverse halfway out of my garage, and I saw 2 airplanes. The sky is blue. It's a beautiful day. Everybody's gonna die. That's all I knew. I went into actual hyperventilating hysterics. But what could I say? They weren't gonna crash into each other. There was no engine trouble. And I wanted to tell my husband, but he was sleeping, and I thought they're gonna think I'm nuts. What do I tell him? The sky is blue. It's a beautiful day, and everybody's gonna die. So I went and drove all the way down. It took me an hour and a half. I was crying. Later that day, I heard the report. And there's a book out, just one last thing I read. It was about people's premonitions before 9/11. And in that book, someone said, "In the sky is blue, it's a beautiful day, and everybody's gonna die." Same thing I had told to me in my premonition. Very unnerving.
I believe in premonitions. There's a lot of stories that check out. Thank you for sharing that one. Wow, amazing. Okay, let's go to the video, the last video, it's a quick video. Let's go take a look at that, and then we'll be through with that portion of the program today.
I believe I've played all 4 of them. I think that was the 4th one.
Oh, did you?
Yes, sir. I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, then we have got that. Well, an owl has just joined us. Look at this. They're all wise owls, who they are. They're very wise. I've never met a dumb owl ever in my entire life in the forest. Never. Look at him. He looks like a judge. He looks like a. Oh my God.
Just to play on what Adrian just said.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Brought to mind, there was an exhibit at the Metropolitan years ago, around the same time that the Tut exhibit was there. And they had a whole room that was dedicated to Dresden. And as you went down the stairs, there was a large painting over the entranceway into the lower section, which was the Dresden exhibit. And it was a painting that was done, I believe, in 1936. And it showed Dresden in flames. And that was, when did Dresden burn? 45? I think it was 45, 44. So yeah, I mean, people having visions of the future definitely believe that is the case. And I think that is probably a lot of drawings out there like Adrian just mentioned. So
there are more things, even on popular television programs. Some of the cartoon things that were being shown have 9/11 or 2 twin towers and imagery like that, and they're cartoons. I'm thinking, wait a second, what's going on here? It's like they're setting us up for the fall. Somehow they're setting us up, and you know, after a while, it's undeniable. What Adrian was saying is true. There are people. It could be a child. It could be a senior. It could be anybody who has premonitions, and that's a whole area. That would be like 10 programs, Joe, in the future about premonitions for sure.
We're not running out of material, that's for sure.
You never will. You never, ever will. Promise you that. Okay, well, all right. So I have something I want to do, but is anybody?
Yeah, Mr. Cornett has his hand up. So Bruce has his hand up.
I didn't see that. Please go ahead. Oh, I see that now. Yeah, please, Bruce.
Oh, excuse me. I'm in the process of watching 3 different Zoom presentations at the same time.
Wow. How many heads do you have? How many heads?
Let me see. About 20 heads on the APEC one, and then there's another one from Winnipeg with a former lawyer about UAPs, and there are probably as many as 30 people on that one. So I'm just bouncing back and forth. So
it's either everything or nothing. Am I right? Everything or nothing. That's how you're either sitting there thinking, what the heck is going to happen? What am I doing? Or there's like a 3-ring circus going on, and they're all important and they're all worth seeing. Absolutely. That goes on.
You've heard of Jack Sarfati?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
The theoretical physicist who has put forth perhaps the most progressive concept of metamaterials and anti-gravity. and reverse Dopplers, which I was able to document in the field. And one of the reasons why he liked me, because he called me his Whittington, that I proved his theory correct. The Doppler is actually reversed going through a metamaterial hull of a ship. And he's on the APEC right now talking.
Oh, wow. There we go. Yeah, that's all. I hope they're recorded so we can hear them later, you know? That's nice when they record something like that.
Yeah, I think it's being
Jack was
recorded.
actually on a couple of months ago on this. So
Oh,
yeah.
I have one other thought I want to just share, in that when I went down to see the memorial, calling it the memorial of 9/11, I want to share something with you. I was very saddened. I was saddened because of what they picked for the design and how it makes you feel. If you've ever seen a sewer on a rainy day and the water is cascading down the hill and going into a very dark sewer, and that's what I felt when I saw the 9/11 memorial. I thought it was disrespectful. I thought it was poorly designed, and I thought it was humiliating. If I had lost a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, or a loved one, and I saw that memorial, I don't know what I would have done. It was so sad to see what they had picked. It seemed like a humiliating degradation of the people the 3,000 people who died deserved better than what they had done there. And I'll stand on that. I was angry. I still am very angry at what they did as a memorial of all the things they could have done. That's what we ended up with out of a competition. Who the hell picked it? I mean, I'm a design student. Okay. I've designed things all my life. This was the worst thing they could have done. It's a sad comment. And then to see the new tower standing there, it doesn't work for me at all. I'm just down there a couple of weeks ago. I was down there looking at it, and something smells real bad down there. It's the whole thing about who got how many trillions or millions or trillions of dollars for the insurance. Someone's got a radio or something. The insurance that went in. You were talking earlier in the program about who benefited. Look at follow the money. We always say follow the money, and you'll have a real good clue. Well, we got a real good clue, all right, of who made so much money 10 times over. And Bruce, when you were talking about the asbestos factor and how that's a huge deal. That is gigantic. What do you do when you have a problem of that magnitude? Well, guess what? Now we know. Now we know what part of that plan was. We know it's in your face. If I was on a jury, and I've been on the jury many times, and I'm very analytical. To me, this is in our face, and we got to get the answers to this. We got to get them now, because otherwise history is going to have only falsifications of what really happened, deceit. And now people are beginning to die that probably did this. As you know, people are already dying that were really the planners of this whole horror story. But not all of them. A lot of them are still alive. And my question is, what are they planning next? They got away with the crime.
We're seeing what's being planned next. It's rolling out now in front of us.
Reset.
Yes.
Bruce, what I have now for the last part of this program is exactly what you just said. That's exactly where I'm going with this, because one thing leads to the other. Okay, I did one of my podcasts on what I'm going to do for you now, and I'm going to go quickly through it. Joe, do you have anything before we start this other section?
No, go ahead.
Okay, and how much time do we have left?
We have
20 minutes.
20 minutes, half hour. Well, then we have a half hour for Q&A.
Yeah, so you're in good shape. You take whatever you need. Could I just reinforce what you just said? Here's a fact. Let's just say it wasn't a scalar weapon, whatever. The absolute and undeniable fact is hundreds of tons of asbestos were in those buildings. Hundreds of tons of the asbestos ended up in dust. It was covering people. They were breathing it into their lungs. Asbestosis has a long latency period of 20 years. I suggest to you somebody ought to be held accountable for that. These people are going to die horrible deaths with asbestosis and lung disease and lung cancer now that the latency period has passed 20 years with that junk embedded in their villi in their lungs. That's a fact that can't be denied. So your point is well taken. No matter who did it or no matter how it came down, that blanketed all of southern Manhattan. There's no getting around that. No matter why it was pulverized, it was there, and you can go back and document the fact that that place was bathed in asbestos insulation in the 70s and 72 when it was built. I just wanted to make that point clear because you bring up a good point. These are real people that have died and that are dying because of this, and families that didn't have somebody sitting at the dinner table for the last 20 years. That's what it brings home to me, not abstracts about money or anything else. It's the reality that how would you like it if your wife or your husband was never there again for their kids because of this crap. So forgive me for being so emotional about it. But I agree with you. That looks like water going down a storm sewer. That is insulting because that's the analogy that you take away from there. It's all gone down the drain. It's all washed away. It's over. These people were useless. Clean it up, clean a sweep, and get them and flush them away. And that was my opinion of it also.
I'm glad to hear you reacted like that too. And I know that for a fact that some other people, once I said that, said, you know, Nick, I felt the same thing. Hope was gone. Hope was gone. It was down the drain. And emotionally and psychologically, that's the message. That's the message. Okay, I'm going to go on here with this other part. This, I know everybody here probably knows everything I'm going to read. So I'm going to go quickly through it. And it's called, What 30 Things Are Operating on Us Right Now? 30. And when I started doing my list of 30 things that were operating on us right now, impacting upon us right now, I was thinking when I sat down, maybe I'll get to a dozen, maybe 12. I'm up to 30, guys. I'm up to 30. And that scares the hell out of me. And you know all of these, but I'm going to go through them quickly. And then the last part of this, anybody who wants to comment or bring other data, please go ahead. All right. Also, if I've missed something, please email me or email me through Joe, and Joe will email me. Nick, you have to add this to the list. I would really welcome that. Okay, here we go. Number 1, bioweapons attacks through massive world inoculations from massive death. That's number 1. Does that ring any bells, guys? Number 2, control of news reporting. Well, hey guys, especially the people here that have been in the news, you know what's going on. I can't imagine what you think when you see the news now. Number 3, control of free speech, right? Television, newspapers, internet, control of words, hate speech, different kinds of politically correct words that you now have to say. Control. Number 4, controlled social media. Oh my God. YouTube, Facebook, all the rest of them. Take down what you want to express because they decided that they don't want to put it on for other people to hear and see. That's going on right now. When it first started, I couldn't believe that people weren't like in masses saying enough. Number 4, control of visual perceptions. That's on TV, news, movies, magazines, billboards, fake news, imagery that's from a computer, not real life, but reported as real life. Total deception of what's real and what is happening. Number 6, ears. Radiation and very loud noise to desensitize and use. I've suffered from tinnitus that was spiked highly when they installed not 1, but 26 smart meters 1 foot from my kitchen of my apartment. Not 26 smart meters. Okay, enough said about that. That's a program unto itself. Number 7, nose. Pollutions, lethal chemicals in the air that we're breathing, smoke, other kinds of very harmful particles that are all over the place, and not just in the cities either. Number 8, mouth, eating low nutritious foods that weaken our health and our teeth. If you're supplying people with low nutrition, that's going to affect them. 9, stomach, poisons in the food that deliberately make us sick with no regulations at all. Some of these things are coming from China with very few regulations at all that are on the market that we're eating. And they're not all labeled from China at all. Okay, that's number 9. Number 10, airplanes spraying dangerous chemicals. Can you say the word chemtrails? Chemtrails. Who in the world would allow a chemtrail? Everybody in power. I actually went to a city council person, smart woman, smart, respected here in Manhattan. I said, I want to talk to you about chemtrails. I've got lots of photographs. They're all over the skies, crisscrossing us right now. And she looked at me, and there was this moment of dead silence. And then she looked at me and said, Nick, what's a chemtrail? All right. Okay, here we go. What's a chemtrail, guys? Oh my God. By the way, we have an analytical report of a laboratory that did the test on what crap is coming out of the planes and doing the chemtrails. Wait till you read what that's about. You will be absolutely shocked. I was. Number 11, radiation from home and public Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is not our friend at all. It's convenient, but it's not our friend. It can hurt you. It can hurt your brain. The less Wi-Fi, if any, the better. A mechanic came up to my apartment by my request and said, Mr. Curto, even though you don't have Wi-Fi in your apartment because you have a cord from your modem right to your laptop, don't think that you're protected because all your neighbors have Wi-Fi. It's going all over your apartment. You're not protected at all. And he's a company man. Okay. Next, number 12, food supplies, depleting nutrients from soil that has lost the nutrients that they're still using. Growing foods from factories, that's going to be the big trend. Look what Bill Gates is doing now, buying up all that land, all the farmland. Hello? Why would that be bad? Of course it is. That's part of their plan. Not only growing food for like vegetables, but also growing meats, beef, chicken, and different kinds of fish artificially. And they're putting chemicals in that for the taste and the look. Does that sound appetizing to anybody here? I've just lost my appetite, tell you the truth, guys. Number 13, we're only up to 13, water. Who said that fluoride was a good idea? Way back when? And nobody has criticized it to the point of, I saw a report where there was a fluoride in a barrel and the barrel tipped over and the fluoride was eating into the floor. That's what we're drinking as water, and nobody in the health department has said one word. I can't even believe that. I'm reading because I know it's true. That's number 13. We're going to go to 14, and here we go with another area, but it's not unimportant. Is there interference with a radio or something? Can you hear it? All right. Anyhow, I'm hearing that. Number 14 is culture. Culture. How can culture be used against us? To lower our morals, to endanger our hate words used to separate, pitting one race against another. That's going on right now. We all know that. Lewd sexual behavior is encouraged. If you have children, look at their videos. You will be shocked. It's like going to a sleazy club in Las Vegas and seeing the worst strippers you can imagine. And that's what's going on and passing for our music videos. And that's not one or 1,000, that's all of them just about. And I'm not a prude, but this is crazy. This is, and it's encouraged. People are encouraged here it comes, not to care about anything or anyone anymore. You may always do whatever you want. That's the mindset. Do whatever you want. And by the way, there's no punishment for wrongdoing. That is an current that's going on here. We're going to number 15, which is halfway through my list, guys, only halfway. I know, Bruce, you're shaking your head because you know this is craziness. Number 15, popular music, sex, anger, hate, depravity, sad, no hope, no love, no happiness, no responsibility, no deep love shown anymore. Deeply suspicious of everyone. That's part of what's going on here. Relationships are made to look weak. Always. That's what this undercurrent is about. And that's what the kids, as well as the adults, are seeing. Number 16, dance. Both men or women in low class, overly sexy, nasty body positions and cheap dancing moves. Grabbing sexual parts. Both men and women, by the way, grabbing sexual parts and waving them in front of the camera is commonplace. And that is now reflected. If you go to a club, you're going to see people doing. How in the world did Deborah start learning that kind of dance? Well, Deborah was watching videos. Clothes, number 17, low class, cheap, dirty looking clothes. I saw a guy yesterday, right on 3rd Avenue, and his pants, a young guy, maybe 22, his pants weren't on his waist, guys. They weren't halfway down his ass. They were below his ass, and they were going down around his thighs, and he kept pulling them up. He pulled them up 3 times in one block, and I was waiting for him to trip and fall on his face, but he kept pulling them up. Nobody clues him in that might not be a good look. Can you imagine your daughter brings him home as her boyfriend? How would you treat this guy? I know what I would do with a gun. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, I'm reading this and it's funny and yet it's sad. Here we go. Tasteless, dirty, low life look is encouraged. The hoodie wearing, looking like thugs, not like regular people, but trying to look like thugs, ripped clothes in all the wrong places even. More ripped clothes, the better. And looking more like third world, and definitely you have to look tough. You have to look like a thug. Many skull heads. Have you seen all the skull heads on grandmothers? I have seen grandmothers wearing skull heads with diamond eyes. What is that the good look for you, ma'am? No, I don't think so. Also, fear symbols of the devil, of evil horns and things like that. What happened? And owls are symbolic of Illuminati. I'm seeing a lot of owls around. Something is wrong with that. Okay, it's done to shock and to intimidate. That's the message. Number 18, language. Racism in a lot of words now. Black Lives Matter, anger is encouraged. And people will find things that you don't mean at all, but they would say, you're saying that, and then they'll turn it around. So you have to be on the defense when you didn't mean that at all, okay? Race words of hate, distrust are used to separate and conquer all groups, pitting one group against another. Politically correct language, again, to trap you and control your mind. Many 4-letter words in pop music lyrics. If you follow the lyrics, you're going to hear words that I know when I was growing up, I would have been reprimanded. Like, don't you ever say that again. Number 19, social graces, lack of good manners. That's like weak. You shouldn't be doing good manners anymore because you got to be tough, right? You got to be so tough that you don't want to do good manners to anybody. I was on an elevator going down, and this young girl came in, and when the doors opened up, like 30 seconds later, I waited for her to come out of the elevator. She looked at me and she said, "I don't need you to help me." What? I was like, did I just hear her say that? And she was angry at me because I was letting her get out of the elevator first. I thought that was something nice to do. Okay. Older women will say thank you usually and go, but not the younger women. Think of that. That's what's going on with the younger generation right now. Okay, here we go. One more, couple more here. Deliberate making good manners look weak and old-fashioned. That's part of this. 20, attacking all religion and spiritual organizations, attacking all the belief systems. No more God. That's the fashion. Don't even begin to go to the temple or the church or the mosque. For the younger people especially, get religion out of here now because it's our enemy of the people who want to control. Okay, we're on to number 21. Attack governments, aggressively working to weaken and overthrow all world governments, killing major political leaders. We've just seen that recently. We need another Pearl Harbor to give us reason to go to war so we can have a lot more money. Yeah, more money the better. That's how it is. Attacked by our own government. Yeah, because that's also going to make in the long run big money for big business. To hell with everybody else. Number 22, control of major industry. Now, big corporations used to be, that's an American corporation or that's a Italian corporation. Now it's not anything to do with the country. That's gone. That's gone. It's only allegiance to the bottom line greedy dollar. That's what it is. And that all across the board leads to terrible, terrible problems. Number 23, controlling grade school, university, and college teaching programs. Control of what's being taught and studied. No Pledge of Allegiance, no more prayers, because that's dangerous. Teaching that America is not a good place anymore. America is to be ashamed. That pisses me off, I'll tell you right now, more than almost anything. I'm from New England. We went to visit the places of historical significance. I understood what those people were going through then. It made a big impression upon me. Teaching that America needs to be forgotten. America is not to be proud of anymore. Teaching that the New World Order is the only way, here it comes, to be safe. To be safe. We need to embrace the New World Order for the reason of being safe. Listen to that. Number 24, and here's an interesting one, weather control and manipulations to devastate important world areas as a weapon. Well, when I was growing up, they said that they were seeding the clouds and making rain in the desert so they could feed the world populations because they could make the deserts grow. Do you remember that? That was how many years ago? Me? A long time ago, guys. So what am I saying? If that's what they could do then and they were successful, what the hell are they doing now? All these dynamite hurricanes and all kinds of worldwide that are wiping out and weakening all the major countries. Is that an accident or is it planned? I'll put that on the table. Number 25, we got 25, we got to 30, 25, control of the economy and of money. Forget the United States dollar. We're going to a different money system. That's what the bankers want. Something that they can make a lot more money with, and we're supposed to say yes to that. Number 26, credits for good behavior. Hello, communist China. If you're toting the communist line, if you are saying and behaving as they're telling you you should think and should behave, you get more credits. But if they find, and here it comes, oh, we saw you on camera and we heard what you were saying, you don't get another 100 credits. What am I going to do for food? That's your problem. Do you see the manipulation? And do you think it's ever coming to the United States? Does anybody think it's coming to the United States? That would be one I'd like. Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Okay.
It's already here.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Number 27, particle beam weapons against people and property to control. And they're using those particle beams. I've seen when people are screaming because they feel as though they're on fire. It's a way to get the crowds to disperse as a weapon, as a tool. Number 28, brain. 5G and smart meters. Well, this is you're going into again personal for me, and I'm sure for you guys, emits admittedly dangerous radiation from the towers that transmit all this, and those towers can be turned up a lot. Why? Well, that's a good question. Does anything, the towers being turned up, have anything to do with what's going with being inoculated with? There's a lot of people talking about that. That's a whole other program, Joe. A good program, believe
That's
me.
right. The introduction of graphene into the
Graphene.
inoculations, which is
Exactly.
excited into a ionizing radiation under 5G frequency. That's a fact.
Bingo. Absolutely true. And does anybody ever warn anybody about that? Except a few doctors who are the most courageous. They should all be getting medals for being heroes that are telling you the truth, but they are few and far between. And they
They've
are
been blackballed and fired.
exactly, Joe, exactly what's going on. And so it's a way of saying the message is shut up now, shut up, or worse than that. Number 29, guys, we got two more. The electromagnetic pulse bomb, the EMP. When I got wind of that a few years ago, my heart sank because the EMP bomb, all the major countries have it. And what does it do? If it's America, it will be on a satellite or a guided missile. And in the middle of our country, it will be turned on. And once it's turned on, what happens? It will signal huge amounts of electromagnetism that will fry everything in sight. The only thing that won't be fried, if you have a microwave oven and you put your cell phone in the microwave, it will protect it. But for everybody else,
Gags.
there you go, right? But the network's down, so what the hell? You don't have it anyways, right? But it's frying all of our electrical, everything we got. It will put us 150 years back by one bomb, And here it is, as people are dying, because of course they would, because the pumps for the water, the food, when they all were dying in a month or two, whatever it's going to take, then all the buildings and all of that wonderful towns and cities will get the bodies out of there, and we could go occupy that, guys, because we have killed them, and we now can occupy New York City. We'll just take out all the bodies, and we have hundreds of millions of people. We'll bring them there. Okay, I'm going off a little in fantasy, but not a lot. Not a lot. Number 30, and then I'll stop. And here's number 30. Mind scanning and thought suggestion. Now, Al Bielek, the Philadelphia experiment, if you remember that, a couple of those films, and Al Bielek was certainly one of the major people that did the stories about what was going on for the Philadelphia experiment. Well, I found out many moons ago that he was going to be in New York City. And I don't know how I did this, but I got to him and said, Mr. Bielek, would you come and talk to the Disclosure Network New York? We would so love to have you. And he said, when and where? And he shows up. And he did not one, not two, a 3-hour lecture. And we were all on the edge of our chairs. I wish we had recorded that. Oh my God. And one of the things he said, and this stuck with me, get this, one of the things he said of like hundreds, he said, in the future, they're going to be able to read your mind. They're going to be able to understand what you're thinking and what you're planning. And they will use that against you, or mostly against you. So it could be good technology, but turned in the wrong way, it's a monster. Okay. Guess what, guys? We have the technology now. It's been in a few places. If you've been reading, they can do that. Now they're saying, well, if you're in an airport and someone's going to blow up the plane once you get on it, we may be able to find what they're thinking about and take them out of the line. Okay, that's a good use, but you know what? There's a lot of bad uses for this too. You can imagine, you can implant thoughts in people's brains. You can make them start to talk and think like you want them to through a new technology. That's number 30, guys. And that's what I got. There you go. A discussion.
Nick, I have one you can add to your list.
Please.
Transhumanism.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Right on the money. Yes, because it's another category. And what's his name? Musk, Elon Musk. What's he talking about right now? Right?
Artificial- Yep.
Yep,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
others too. That is one of the trends right now in what's going on as far as dialogue. That's a big deal. Thank you. Any other suggestions, guys? Yeah. AD and then Stanley. Go
I
ahead.
just want to add to your CMPs, those will blow up all the transformers, and it'll be like napalm everywhere. It'll just set everything on fire. Our electrical system. If we had the old insulators, we'd be okay. One
What
other
would
thing I
happen
want
in
to
the
mention.
1850s with a CME?
CME, right?
Carrington
Oh, man.
effect.
Right.
1850s.
Which we just
1859.
had one several days ago. We just had a major one several
Right.
days ago.
One other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if anyone can remind me, I'll find out the article, but Bush signed something back in the 90s. They want to have one currency between Canada, the United States, and Mexico.
Yep.
Yes.
And no borders, but I forgot what that was called, but that's probably right around the corner.
Yeah.
It was-
Good points. Good points all. Yep.
Yeah, it was a follow-on to NAFTA, where they're going to unify. It's similar to the EU. They were going to make a North American pact between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. There were all kinds of treaties signed. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one currency.
Exactly.
Right.
I would suggest something for your comment, and that is at the base value change that we're looking at here, we have a perfect storm of, I think, three events. You have a breakdown, which is now gone into second and third generation of the traditional nuclear family unit. So that means there was no role model in either the man or the woman or the father or the mother, one person who was working 20 hours a day raising children. Secondly, we have an inculcation in the educational system, which has now accelerated. These are all my observations and opinions, so take it as you see fit, but has accelerated the discrediting of the basic values of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the rule of law, so on and so forth. And I taught K through 12 as a substitute for years. Doesn't make me an expert, but I also taught at the college level for 3 years as an adjunct in a state university in New Jersey. And I saw this even around 2000 and so forth. And the third thing is a lack of civility, a lack of accountability, no boundaries of right and wrong. These are things that Nick, you alluded to. There are no boundaries. You know, I had an argument one time a couple of years ago when they took the Ten Commandments out of the state building in Alabama. And the argument was, well, that was religious based. My point was, look, I don't care if Pee Wee Herman wrote the Ten Commandments. It doesn't matter. Is that not, can we not agree, no matter where you are, you know, on the spectrum of political opinion, that those tenets are not a bad way to run a society? Is there anything wrong, no matter who wrote it, whether it was Mohammed or Charlie Manson or somebody else? It's not right to take someone else's life. It's not right to steal their property. It's not right to lie. So what we've done is we have accelerated this demand to throw out everything in the past, all the tenets, basis, and values, and replace them with some nirvana driven by, you know, stimulus checks. But I would suggest to you, in my humble opinion, it all comes down to one word, and that is conditioning. We are being conditioned to obey, no matter how illogical, knee-jerk, back and forth, good, right, or wrong. Put your mask on, take your mask off. You can eat here, you can walk in with the mask, take it off. You have to get this inoculation. You don't have to. We're locked down, we're not locked down. People are confused, and I'll go back to the writings of psychopath Herman Goebbels, who was one of the best PR officers in the last 200 years. Keep telling a lie long enough, people are going to buy it. And the best way to get people to acquiesce is to scare the hell out of them and then come along and say, we're the government, we'll take care of you. Yeah. And the second best way, which goes to the greed at the basis of most human failings, in my opinion, is throw some money at them. Hang that greenback out there in front of them. They'll follow you around like the Pied Piper. Just go to an event and see somebody that's handing out bags or pens or sippy cups or whatever, and the line's 3 miles long because it's something for free. You're giving me something. Okay, I'll go along with you. And that's oversimplification. But I think that we are being conditioned. And we do not teach in schools, no matter what you say, because it works on either side of the fence. Discernment, critical thinking, how to evaluate an argument, how to say, what do I feel about this? Well, let's take a look at the facts, and I'll devise my own opinion based on information and an informed opinion. Now, you can disagree with any of that, but that's my observation. I think we're going headlong into people that can't even make a decision on what their values are and what they believe in, no matter what they might be. Enough said. I'll shut up.
You're here, absolutely. Bruce, go ahead.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Just something, throw a little bit of irony into this picture. I recently bought a house, the first house I've owned in decades. And guess where it is? Right on the border, next to the Trump's wall. And I recently got a new car. And guess what type it is? A Ford Escape. I'm wondering whether or not somebody's trying to get the message across to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, has somebody got a radio or something? I'm hearing something here.
I keep picking up. Bruce, do you have I think you have a TV on, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
So,
we're picking up the feedback.
Okay.
Just, if you turn off the, because it really is coming in. But you're right on the money. Bruce, absolutely true. That's exactly right. Anybody else before? I want to make sure I get my song in.
Yeah, just a quick observation. Sure. What Bruce Pearson was talking about a short while ago, it seems that what we've done is we've traded the common sense, of which the 10 Commandments is essentially, how do you live with other people? What is the successful way of doing that? And we've traded it for moral relativism. So basically what they've been teaching this for some time in school, is that, well, people, their cultures are different. Therefore, this person can murder somebody because it's part of his culture, and we shouldn't judge him for that. And I think we have bent over backwards, and now we have 3 generations that take that as gospel. And therein lies, I think, the problem that I don't know how we can overcome it, because it's now institutionalized throughout our society.
You're absolutely right. And it's aggressively being pushed on us, aggressively. This is not a subtle deal at all. This is in your face. And I have seen Rose Bowl, I have seen sports programs, Olympic big programs, and I'm seeing Illuminati symbols all over the place. I'm thinking, am I crazy, or are there 200 devils wearing black masks and horns dancing with G-strings on? Hello, what's wrong with that picture? And then it gets worse. I mean, and that's part of the culture now. It's engineered. It's engineered to bring us to the lowest possible level. And 30, and here we go. We got more now, 30, 32, 33 and counting. And that's aggressively going on with everybody right now. This is in our face, and we are besieged. This is a war. This is a big war, and that's what's going on. Yeah. Before we go, though, I want to play my song. A quick thing about the song is I wrote it. It's called "We'll Stand Up for America." And this is why I wrote it. People are saying, Nick, I don't feel comfortable wearing my American flag on my sweater outside. Why? Because somebody might be offended, or somebody might say something against America. I said, really? People are not wearing pins. They're thinking, maybe I shouldn't be obvious that I love America. I love the country. Maybe it's something that I should hide. No, you don't need to do that. Yes, you should stand up for America. We all should. And instead of going on the football field and being on your knees, you should stand up for this country because of all the great things we have done. It's not perfect. We're struggling. We're trying. We have to, but it's not perfect, but it's the best country in the world. We've done more for the whole world, for humanity, than any other country. And that's my argument. So this is, oh, and one more thing. When I did the song, I wanted to go a time trip from 1776, where it all began, so to speak, to 2021 and beyond musically. So Yankee Doodle Dandy with the drums and fife. Well, the story quickly is that the British were making fun of the American soldiers. And they were saying, you look like bums. You don't have a big uniform. We've got a British uniform. You're a bunch of farmers. You're not going to have a chance. Well, guess what? They won a major battle. And so when the British, with all their finery, were moving ass out of there as quick as they could, the Americans started singing in a loud voice, Yankee Doodle. This is us, guys, and we won. And that's the reason I put Yankee Doodle, a little bit of that at the beginning and at the end of a hard rock song that I wrote. And this is aimed at everybody, including the younger people. So anytime you want to play it now, it goes about almost 5 minutes. So you're gonna have to relax.
Here we go. We're kicking.
You put it up a little higher.
That looks like, okay, hold on.
Stand up for America.
There you go, guys.
Did you sing that? Was that your singing?
No, it wasn't. It was a studio singer. We're doing the music video, which will be out in a week. And you guys are going to hear it. You're going to see it first. It's that soundtrack with all the visuals.
Nice. Well done.
Very,
Thank
very-
you.
very
I
nice.
wish. Thank you so much. I'm really proud of that song.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make at this point?
Scott Stanley there?
Okay. As we both grew up in New York City, I remember way back when on Channel 5, they'd always say at about 10 o'clock, you know where your kids are. Okay. And then as time went on, you'd pick up a milk carton and you'd see a kid missing. Okay. And I think still today, possibly on Channel 7 here in the New York area, so-and-so has been missing. Now, one thing I've always noticed is that teenagers are missing, not younger folks, not people like you and I who, if we're one of those, you get abducted and you get put back again. And seniors, you might find them in the forest, who the hell knows. But make a long story short, where do the teenagers go? They don't seem to come back.
Yeah.
Parents do.
They're being eaten. They're
Really?
eating food.
I wonder about that, okay? Why that only group? The older group, up and down, not a
They're
problem.
tender.
They're tender.
They're tender.
Is that the best? Come on, we can do better than that.
And their blood
I
is
think
Tastes like chicken.
sexual positions that they are not necessarily looking for or want, but made to do with drugs and all kinds of other things to make them obey and get under the thumb of people who then will use them and sell their services. I think that there's more to that than you can imagine.
What about abductions?
Yes. Well, you know what? What you're saying here, I wanted, if I had more time, maybe some other program, Joe, would be about the deal that Eisenhower made with ETs on the Air Force Base. I really want to get into that. And you're touching it right now, but that's a big deal.
More than anything, because adults get abducted and then returned, okay, with their stories, okay? What about kids who do get abducted and
never return?
Never hear of them.
Well, right now, I mean, worldwide, there's a problem. Oh, so, hold on.
Yeah, you're echoing pretty bad.
Right now, worldwide, there is an issue with pedophilia. There are pedophilia rings. They've reached into the highest levels of our institutions. The government.
Joe Biden.
Yeah, everything, and these kids they're being traded. I worked for the FBI back in the early 80s, between 82 and 85. And during that time, Eton Pates was abducted and apparently killed. We never found him. But what came out of that abduction was the fact that there were groups of people that were trading in children. They were stealing them at the time. And the FBI came up with a missing child database. It was around 84, I guess. And that's been institutionalized. And since that went into effect, there's been hundreds of thousands of children that have disappeared. Hundreds of thousands of people have disappeared. Even just in this country, there's been a massive amount. Also in the parks, national parks especially, have been centers, and this is all of them, have stories to tell about people going into the park and then not coming out again. There
That's
was a gentleman that he was with, he was, I believe, a sheriff or a.
David Pilates, missing 411. He was a Lakewood, California. I've interviewed him. Go on YouTube. If you want to hear something that is beyond belief, as Joe said, 16,000 cases, just not people wandering off, falling in crevices, getting lost. There's clusters all around national parks. Yosemite is one of the biggest. Children, infants found 5 miles away. Adults after been swept 20 times with people arm to arm, and all of a sudden the body shows up 3 weeks later. I mean, stuff that is documented and defies logic. Joe is absolutely. David Pilates, Missing 411. He's written several books. He just did a documentary. There's a lot of YouTube presentations on there. Listen to the detail and the facts of a law enforcement person, and he doesn't have any answers. So, but it's thousands of people.
Right.
Cattle mutilation is in our face. The cattle mutilation is about sex organs being harvested along with the blood of the cattle. And if you translate that into human disappearance, well, you've got your answer right there. That's what they're after.
Dr. Stephen Greer said that he's done a great deal, as you know, for ufology, but he said there's no such thing as evil aliens. They're all good and all wanting to help us. What do you think about that, with what you just said?
I laugh at it. I think it's ludicrous.
I do too. I wonder why he's saying that. Is there a deal somehow?
Yeah, he's making money off of it.
Something, right? It's got to be, right? It's got to be that, because it doesn't make any sense.
Adrian, I believe you have a comment or a question.
Yeah, when you're discussing aliens, there are, I'll call them creatures here that were here before us, and they're not alien, because we're more alien than they are, and they do have an appetite for humans. And I believe they're ultimately in control, right through the Queen of England is controlled by them. So that's like a whole nother show. Between missing people in the parks could be underground tunnels. It could also be time warps and portals. I think they crisscross, but there's a lot of strange goings on in the parks. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
Keep us dumb or take us to the dumb. Deep underground.
They're over the place underground. So, yeah. But the missing children is actually in the millions, not in the thousands.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of bifurcating between the United States and the rest of the world. It's pretty bad here, but it's probably much easier to steal children in a lot of other areas.
Nick, I sent you a video on the email from Charlie Ward, who interviewed a survivor born into the underground sex slavery.
Oh, thank you.
You got to watch that.
Thank you for that. Look, yeah, I will. In fact, I'll send it out to everybody.
Yeah, she blew the cover on El Presidente.
Yeah, well, also Pizza.
Oh, wait, no, I did see that. Adrian, I just saw that this morning, and I was blown away. Guys, you got it. Joe, you have it. Everybody on my list has it right now. Don't miss that. Oh, you're right. What's the title of it, Adrian?
Charlie Ward is the interviewer. And
okay.
I mean, he doesn't tell a whole lot of detail, but you get the idea. I know more than I really want to know about what has been happening. It's disgusting.
Right. Joe, for anybody who's not on my list, send it to your list, because it's really it's powerful stuff.
Okay,
she names names. She names names on this one.
Oh, really? And this is what, the pedophilia issues, or what does it cover? I haven't.
No, sex trade, where they, these women are,
Yeah, and she names names, and she describes things that I don't think anybody is capable of making up. I think she eyewitnessed this, and she is trying to somehow survive all her images that she went through. It's Adrian's right. It's quite an amazing, powerful piece of video. So everybody should see this. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't have much memory before age 5, but some children are born there. The biggest prize is a brand new baby with the placenta attached, and I'll leave the rest up to your imagination.
Well, there's
That's-
that whole power trip about infant blood and so
Well,
forth.
yeah, well,
It's-
what do they call it when creating a lot of pain and
Oh, yeah.
Adrenochrome out of it, yeah.
yeah.
It couldn't get any darker. It could not get any darker. And the things about raising people and then taking their organs, if they have to be killed, they're killed. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this. It doesn't.
Oh yeah.
And that's a reality in our planet, in our time, in our country, in our cities. That's going on.
Yep.
Nick, I want to make one other statement. You know how you said the monument about the water going down the tube?
Yep.
The first thing that came to my mind is what they use for those killing rooms and the abuse and where they do the snuff outs.
Yeah.
They have
Yes.
rooms, drains where they wash everything down.
I would say that was the inspiration, because it's got to be that. It's in your face. It's disrespectful. It's hateful, and it's called a monument to the people who died. It's
Callous.
the worst thing I've ever seen. It's the worst,
Yeah.
and even design-wise, it's awful, awful.
It's callous.
Yeah.
It is, and you're being kind with that word, callous. It's way beyond that. It's the most hateful, evil thing I've ever seen. It's like oh my God. Anyhow, yeah.
Okay, this has been a great presentation and a lot of feedback, a lot of things that we can talk about going forward in the future.
Yep.
Now, what I'd like to do, though, I'd like to thank you all for being here and participating today. It was a very lively discussion, lively group. And I just want to also share that we are going to be putting on a conference, a one-day conference in Belmar, New Jersey, at the Camp Evans site, which is the historic part of Fort Monmouth. It's a UAP conference, which will be the first of its kind at this venue. It's going to be Saturday, October 30th this year. It'll start at 8 o'clock. I will be sending out a lot of information. We'll be putting together marketing materials. We have several speakers that are lined up already, and that'll all be sent out as well. This will be the first conference of its kind. So I'm hoping that you all will, especially if you live relatively close to the area. Nick's got his thumb up there, so hope you'll all be able to join us for that day. It should be interesting. It's going to include part of the admission is going to be for all 4 museums, including the Radio Museum. My museum is the Space Exploration Center. We will be operating the radio telescope. We have a 18-meter radio telescope. And if the moon is in our sky, we'll be bouncing your voices off the moon, just like the first time that was done from that site was January 10th, 1946. And that was the birth of the space age. The site also has a lot of more history that I think you all find fascinating. It was part of the Manhattan Project. The fuse mechanisms were for the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were designed there. And also the spies that stole those plans also worked there.
Rosenbergs, right?
Julius Rosenberg actually worked there. So, and that's just scratching the surface. UFOs, it was part of the 1952 UFO flap. It is in Project Sign and Project Grudge. So hopefully you'll join us. It's a venue like you have not been to before. I guarantee
Sign us up. Sign us up now. Sign us right up. We're going.
Okay.
Joe and Bruce, were you going to show that GIF of the missile attack on the?
I've tried to download it. Could you send it to Joe to distribute it so everybody could look at it and put it down on their, download it to their computer? I can't get it to open up. I tried. I'm sorry, Bruce.
Very good. There's a JPEG there that
Yes.
also, and that would, can you upload that? That shows a series.
For some reason, I'm locked up on my downloads are not happening. I don't know why it's corrupted, but perhaps if Joe wouldn't mind distributing that, and Nick, everybody could get on their computer and look at it at their leisure and in more detail. I apologize for that, but it doesn't seem to want to download.
I could put it up on the website too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look forward. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Briefly, I wanted to apologize to everybody if I took over too much time in the meeting. I hope that I didn't offend anybody by shooting my mouth off for such a long period of time. I tend to do that, so I hope I didn't offend anybody by talking too much.
You made some excellent points. So the point you were making, I had some of them, but I didn't have all of them. Thank you. You really added.
Oh, also, last night, and it'll be on again if you get the Travel Channel or Discovery, Bruce's segment from the Alaskan Triangle. And this is a very, very fascinating segment. It goes into great detail about a large pyramid that's larger than the Giza pyramid that was found buried in Alaska.
I've seen that weeks ago.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And Bruce
Wow.
does such an
But it
excellent
wasn't on
job.
last night on Spectrum. They didn't have it listed.
No, you watched you saw the wrong one, I think. It was on Travel Channel.
Yeah, right. Travel Channel on.
Yeah,
I
but
have Spectrum.
they also showed another one of the Alaskan Triangle ones in a different
Right,
episode.
I saw that one.
Yeah. So anyway, treat yourselves if you have access to it. Bruce puts on a very entertaining show. Okay.
Very
Okay,
good.
with that, I'm going
I'll get
to
you for
say-
that, Joe.
Yeah, we're about 5 minutes late for closing. Thanks again for being here. Nick, thank you. Bruce, everybody. Thanks, Jesse Peak, Beth Sully, Amy.
Stanley,
Come back again soon.
thank you all.
You guys are family. You guys are family.
Yeah.
Much love to you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Joe. Very
This
meaningful
will be uploaded
program.
in a couple of days to my website. It will be archived, so you'll be able to see it all again.
Fantastic.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Be safe, everyone.
Good night
Bye-bye.
now.
God bless.